Hello and welcome back to Stay Close. I am your host, Sarah Brassard, and I am so happy that you decided to tune in today. If you've been following along, you know that this podcast is about the courage it takes to come home to ourselves, to heal, to forgive, and to stay close, even when staying close to yourself feels almost impossible. Today's episode is deeply personal to me. We're exploring the power of vulnerability and forgiveness, and how these two forces became the cornerstone of healing in my relationship with my mom. This is a story about dismantling walls built over decades of pain, and about the small, brave acts that can transform even the most fractured relationships. So, wherever you are, come into this moment, take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin. For so many years, my relationship with my mother was defined by distance, mostly on my part. Not just physical distance, but an emotional distance created by misunderstandings and unspoken grief, and the pain of what that unspoken grief can do to a life. I think many of us know what it's like to build walls around our heart, especially when we've been hurt by somebody we love. I want to start by asking you a question. Is there someone in your life, a parent, a friend, a partner, where you feel those walls are really solidly in place? Maybe it's someone you love deeply, like I love my mom. But somehow, over time, misunderstandings or hurt have built a distance between you. Maybe you've tried to reach out only to feel unheard and rejected. Or maybe you found yourself pulling away, not because you don't care, but because it felt safer to protect your heart. I know all about this. As you think about this person, notice what comes up for you. Is it sadness, frustration, longing, or maybe even hope? There's no right or wrong way to feel, right? I invite you to hold that relationship gently in your mind. And as we move through today's episode, just begin to feel into that relationship that very clearly does mean something to you, or else you wouldn't have brought it to mind. You don't have to fix anything through this process. Just allow yourself to acknowledge the presence of those walls and the feelings that come with them. Throughout this episode, I'll be sharing stories and practices that helped me begin to soften those barriers in my life. I hope that as you listen, you'll find small ways to bring compassion and understanding to your own relationships, starting with the one you're holding in your heart right now. You know, I think a lot of us fall into this pattern with people we love most, especially family, where we just can't help but see all the things we wish were different. For me, with my mom, I realized I had this running commentary in my head. I'd notice the things she said and did and immediately start judging, sometimes out loud, but often just in my mind. It was almost automatic, like I was bracing myself against old hurts by keeping her at distance with my judgy way of being. But one day, in the middle of a totally ordinary conversation, I just stopped. I remember this day so clearly. because everything in me wanted to jump back into the old habit of being critical and judgmental. But for some reason or another, I didn't have the energy to do that, and I just stopped. I remember we were on the phone, and for a split second, I could visualize my mom, not as my mom, but as a whole person, someone who had her own struggles and heartbreaks, her own story that I didn't know every detail of. And in that moment, I felt this wave of love and fear all at once. I realized how much I loved her. And I remember thinking how I just couldn't bear not having her in my life. And thinking that letting my judgments and my expectations push her away for good was honestly unbearable. It was like I am creating this divide between my mother and I with my own hand. I am harming her and I'm harming myself at my own hand. So I made a choice right then. I decided to let go of the need to change anything about her or to point out every little thing I thought she should do differently. Instead, I just listened. I let her talk, and I tried to see the world through her eyes. I reminded myself, she's doing the best she can. She's here. She loves you. She's never turned you away. And that was enough. It wasn't some big dramatic moment. She probably doesn't even remember anything about that day. She probably didn't even notice anything had changed. But inside, everything had shifted for me. I felt lighter. I felt closer to her. And I realized that real love, deep, long-lasting love, means accepting someone exactly as they are, not as I wish they would be. Of course, it wasn't perfect after that, right? Old habits are hard to break. And there were plenty of times I slipped back into my critical ways. But I kept coming back to that choice to love her, not despite any perceived imperfections, but including them, because that's what I would want her to do for me. If you're thinking about someone in your life you've been hard on, like I was hard on my mom, I just want to say it's okay to put down that criticism. It's okay to choose love and acceptance, even if it feels unfamiliar or a little scary at first, because it probably will. It's a new way of being, and new ways of being take time and nurturing. But just remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply let the people we care about be themselves and love them all the more for it. One of the most powerful moments in our journey came when we finally began to talk openly about the pain we'd both been carrying through life. For me, it was the grief of losing my parents at a young age and the sense of abandonment I felt when my mother wasn't there in the way I needed her to be. For her, it was the weight of her own regrets, the things she wished she'd done differently, the pain she'd never spoken aloud. I remember sitting across from her one afternoon, my hands shaking and saying, I felt so alone. I expected her to get defensive or to shut down, but instead she took a deep breath and said, I know you felt alone. I felt alone too. And in that moment, something shifted. We saw each other not as adversaries, but as two women, each carrying our own wounds, trying to find our way back to connection. It wasn't easy. There were tears, and sometimes there's anger. There were times when we had to step away and regroup. But every time we came back to the conversation, we chipped away at the walls between us. If you're carrying grief or abandonment, I want you to know that you're not alone and that healing is possible, even if it feels out of reach right now. Looking back, I realize how much courage it took for both of us to finally put words to our pain. For so long, we'd been carrying these heavy stories in silence, afraid that if we spoke them out loud, it would only make things worse. But the opposite was true. When we finally allowed ourselves to be vulnerable, when we let those truths come to the surface, it was like the heaviest weight was lifted from our shoulders. I remember how raw it felt in that moment, though. My voice was trembling, my heart was pounding. I was terrified that by admitting how alone I'd felt, I might push her further away. But my mom's response surprised me. She didn't try to explain or justify. She just met me right where I was, with her own truth. I felt alone too. Those 4 words changed everything. Suddenly, it wasn't just my pain or her pain. It was our pain, something we could share and maybe begin to heal together. After that conversation, things didn't magically become easier. There were days when old wounds would resurface, when we'd get frustrated or overwhelmed and need to take a break. But truthfully, none of them felt like obstacles. They just felt like life, living life. That's being in relationship. It felt some days as though we were taking a step forward and then we were taking a couple steps back, but never like we were leaving each other. Because we kept coming back to each other. We kept choosing to try again, to listen a little more deeply, to forgive a little more freely. And with every honest conversation, every moment of shared vulnerability, the walls between us grew thinner. We didn't have to pretend anymore. We could just be 2 imperfect people doing our best, and that was enough. Forgiveness is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things we can do. For a long time, a really long time, I thought forgiveness meant pretending the past didn't hurt or excusing inexcusable things. But I've learned that real forgiveness starts with ourselves. I had to forgive myself for the anger I'd held on to and for the years I'd spent building walls instead of bridges. I had to forgive myself for not knowing how to heal sooner, for hurting my mother in tender moments of our life, for leveraging and distancing myself from her when I could have been holding her, supporting her, and loving her. Self-forgiveness is essential for emotional healing. It allows us to release guilt, shame, self-blame, making space for compassion and growth. When we forgive ourselves, we break free from the past and open the door to so much more. This process isn't about forgetting what happened or minimizing our pain, but about acknowledging our imperfections and giving ourselves permission to move forward. Only then could I begin to forgive my mother, not because she was perfect, but because she is a human. She has her own wounds, her own limitations. When I could see through that lens, forgiveness became possible. There's a quote I love that I wrote years ago that says, "There's nothing in life that can't be healed." And truly, I've based my own life's work on that and the work I do with my greater community. I believe that at my core, there is nothing in life that can't be healed. But we really do have to believe that we're strong enough to look at our own wounds, our own limitations, our own limiting ways. This quote, "There's nothing in life that can't be healed," became my anchor. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it freed me from its grip. It allowed me to show up in the present, to create a new story for myself and for my relationship with my mom. If forgiveness feels impossible for you right now, that's okay. Start with yourself. Be so gentle. And remember that healing is a process, not a destination. Forgiveness is a choice and often a daily practice, not a one-time event. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting or condoning what happened. It's about choosing to release yourself from the pain that has a hold on your life. When you practice forgiveness, you give yourself the gift of peace and the chance to write a new chapter, both within yourself and in your relationships too. It may take time. In fact, it will take time and a tremendous amount of patience, and that's okay. Every small step you take toward letting go is a step toward greater freedom and healing. Trust that you are worthy of this healing, and remember, you don't have to walk this path alone. There is support, guidance, and hope available to you every step of the way. As our relationship evolved, I began to notice the subtle ways healing showed up in our daily lives. It was a gentle shift of our body language, the way we'd make eye contact a little longer, or how our laughter started to sound less guarded and more genuine. Sometimes healing meant allowing ourselves to be silly together, to rediscover the simple joys we'd miss while carrying so much heaviness through the years. There were also moments when we gave each other the gift of space. We learned to respect each other's boundaries without taking distance personally. This mutual respect became a quiet foundation for trust, letting us both breathe a little easier. I also found that healing invited creativity into our relationship. We started new traditions like taking walks together or sharing old family recipes. These small rituals became touchstone reminders that we were both invested in building something new, not just patching up the past. And through it all, I realized that healing isn't just about mending what was broken. It's about nurturing what's possible. It's about letting hope take root in places where there once was disappointment. Over time, our connection became less about avoiding pain and more about seeking joy, curiosity, and understanding. If you're on this journey, let yourself notice the quiet victories, the moments of ease, the shared smiles, the gentle silences that feel safe. Celebrate the ways you and your loved one are growing, even if it's slow or looks different than you imagined. Every bit of progress is meaningful, and every new memory is proof that healing is alive and ongoing. And what I'd like to do now with you is to invite you to a practice, a forgiveness practice, that could possibly set you on a path of self-healing and self-forgiveness. So if you're able, go ahead and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and slowly breathe out. Let your body begin to settle. Now bring to mind the relationship that we talked about in the beginning of this podcast, a relationship where you may feel some distance or pain. As I said earlier, it might be with a parent, a friend, a partner, or even yourself. But most importantly, just notice what comes up for you as you hold this person in your awareness. Pay attention to your body. Maybe there's tension in your chest, a tightness in your throat, or a heaviness in your stomach. Whatever you're feeling, just notice it. There's no need to push it away or try to change it. Simply observe it with kindness and without judgment. Now imagine for a moment that you can invite a little light into that space. This light might feel warm and soft, like a gentle ray of sun or a glow of a candle. It doesn't have to fix everything right now. It's just a little light, enough to create some room for healing. What would it feel like to speak your truth in this relationship? Maybe it's sharing something you've been holding inside, or simply being honest about how you feel. Or what if you allowed yourself to listen with an open heart, without needing to respond or defend? Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is just be present and listen. You might also imagine writing a note or sending a text or making a call, small acts that open the door to connection. Or perhaps, if that feels too big right now, you can simply send a silent wish for healing and peace to this person and to yourself. And then if it feels right to you in this moment, gently ask yourself these questions. What would forgiveness look like here? What might it feel like to forgive myself, even if it's just a little bit? What might it feel like to forgive the other person, even if I'm not ready to say that out loud yet? There's no pressure to have answers right away. Just hold these questions softly in your mind, like a seed planted in fertile soil. Take another deep breath in and let it out so slowly. Feel the calmness that comes with simply being here with yourself And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and return to the room. Remember, healing is not a race or a destination. It's a journey that unfolds in its own time. Be gentle with yourself as you take these steps, because each moment of vulnerability, each choice to forgive, is a powerful act of courage and love. This expanded practice invites listeners to connect deeply with their feelings, encourages self-compassion, and offers multiple gentle pathways toward vulnerability and forgiveness. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to thank you for sharing this space with me. It was a tender podcast for me and one that I've wanted to share for a really long time. This story means so much to me because from the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful that I have my mom and that I still have my mom. She's 96 years old, and that we still have this extraordinarily connected relationship. And I'm so proud of that. Just remember that every small step you take matters. They rarely are leaps and bounds that give us the greatest progress and success in our healing. So think turtle steps. And eventually these turtle steps, they add up to a lot. So if you found this episode helpful, please consider leaving a review or sharing your thoughts in the comments. It not only encourages me, but it also helps others find the podcast and feel less alone in their own healing. And that is so important. I want to leave you with these words from this podcast. There's nothing in life that can't be healed. And stay close to yourself, to your truth, and to the people who matter most to you. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay close.
Feet, the sensual toe tapping up your street. It's thorn asunder. It's thorn. It's in the tombs where lovers meet and lay, 'cause the gods there, they would seek another. It may come later. It may. For most of us, the summer sun, bikini lines on having fun. For most of us who learn to wait, get left behind in Providence too late.